A truck driver was the victim of a robbery and tragically was shot, dying for more than 20 minutes. However, what he witnessed in heaven and the words that Jesus revealed to him about what will happen on October 31st have the power to profoundly shake his beliefs. Pay attention, because this story is impactful. My name is Thomas Lafontaine. I am a truck driver, and I am 47 years old. I come from Montreal, Quebec, and I never thought that one day I would share such an extraordinary experience. What I experienced during my clinical death radically transformed my view of God, life, and the true purpose of our existence. I grew up in a traditional Catholic family, but over the years I confess that my faith began to fade. Between the long journeys transporting loads across North America and the relentless pressures of everyday life, God became a distant presence, almost forgotten. He was someone I turned to only in moments of despair. For almost 20 years I traveled the roads of Canada and the United States, meeting people of all kinds and witnessing both the beauty and the cruelty that the world has to offer. My routine followed a predictable pattern. I picked up the load, delivered it on time, rested just enough, and soon returned to the road. Despite my long absences, my marriage to Marie remained strong. Our 2 children, Jan and Sophie, were already in university, following their own paths. I was living life on autopilot, not delving into the questions about the true meaning of it all. It was a cold October night, typical of Canadian autumn. I had just delivered a load in Toronto and was now heading back to Montreal. I decided to stop at a gas station near Kingston to refuel and take a moment to rest. The place was almost deserted due to the late hour of the night. Only a few trucks were parked and a sleepy attendant remained behind the counter, looking as tired as the environment around. After refueling the car, I decided to go to the convenience store to pay and, of course, enjoy a coffee. It was at that moment that everything took an unexpected turn. While I was waiting in line, 2 hooded men burst into the place shouting and brandishing weapons. One of them quickly headed to the cashier, while the other kept us under his intense surveillance. There were 2 more customers besides me, all paralyzed by the fear that hung in the air. I can't find words to describe the whirlwind of thoughts that invaded my mind at that moment. It may have been an act of recklessness or perhaps a protective instinct upon seeing the fear etched on the face of the young attendant. When the robber turned for a moment, I saw an opportunity and tried to overpower him. I managed to grab his arm, but I didn't anticipate the reaction of the second man. The sound of the gunshot reached my ears even before I felt the impact. The pain was intense but fleeting, lasting only a few seconds. The bullet pierced my chest, hitting my heart directly. I collapsed on the store floor as echoes of distant screams filled the air, and I fixed my gaze on the fluorescent ceiling that stretched above me. My last conscious thought revolved around Marie and the children, and the painful reality that I would never return home. It was then that something extraordinary happened. The anguish that enveloped me simply dissipated, giving way to an indescribable feeling of lightness. I felt a strange sensation of floating above my own body. I watched, in a state of almost trance, as the doctors rushed in, fighting with all their might to revive me. The floor of the store was stained with blood, and the expressions of horror etched on the faces of the people around me were heart-wrenching. However, surprisingly, I did not feel fear. It was as if I were watching a movie depicting someone else's life. I tried to communicate with the paramedics, attempting to convince them that I was fine, but to my frustration, no one seemed to hear me. On the day I left my physical body behind, something extraordinary happened. In the distance, I spotted a light that at first was not very intense. However, little by little it began to shine more brightly. I felt irresistibly drawn to that light, as if every fiber of my being knew that this was the path I was meant to follow. As I approached, the light expanded, becoming increasingly radiant, but in a way that did not dazzle or cause discomfort. I entered a luminous tunnel that seemed to cross dimensions. The walls of this tunnel pulsed with a golden glow, emanating an energy that conveyed absolute peace. Worries, fear, and pain had vanished. What remained was a deep sense of returning home after a long and exhausting journey. As I emerged from the tunnel, I found myself in a place that defied any mundane description. The ground beneath my feet seemed to be made of translucent crystal, radiating its own light that illuminated everything around. The sky, if I can call it that, displayed a deep blue, interwoven with shades of gold and purple. Everything around me pulsed with life, as if each particle had its own consciousness. It was in that moment that I noticed the presence of luminous figures around me. They were beings of light who radiated unconditional love. Among them, some seemed familiar to me. I recognized my father, who had passed away 10 years ago, and my younger brother, whom we lost as a child in a tragic accident. They didn't use words, but somehow, I could understand everything they wanted to convey to me. As I allowed myself to be enveloped by that extraordinary reality, I noticed a presence approaching. A bright light, more powerful than all the others, was advancing towards me. Instinctively, I realized who it was, even before I could distinguish its outlines. It was Jesus Christ, not the one we see depicted in church paintings, but the very essence of divine love in its purest form. His presence was so majestic that I found myself falling to my knees, not out of fear, but from a deep and absolute reverence. He exuded an authority that made the entire universe seem to bow to his will. However, at the same time, there emanated a love so deep that it made me cry like a child. "Thomas," he said, and my name, pronounced by his lips, sounded like the most beautiful music ever composed. "You have served with honor, but your true mission is about to begin." Your hands, extended towards me, bear the marks of crucifixion. The scars that adorn your palms now shine like precious jewels, eternal witnesses of your sacrifice for love. As I stood up, I was able to see your face clearly. His eyes shone like living flames, penetrating the depths of my being, unveiling every thought, every secret, every moment of my life. "Sir," I managed to articulate, my voice trembling with emotion, "why am I here?" Your expression became solemn and the light around us intensified. "Because October 31st, 2025 will mark the greatest spiritual revival that humanity has ever witnessed, and my people need to be prepared." He said this with an urgency that made each word resonate through eternity. With a gesture, the space in front of us transformed. Now, we were observing the earth from a perspective so extraordinary that it was almost impossible for a human being to fully comprehend. It was as if we had the ability to observe the planet in its entirety, while simultaneously seeing each human being that inhabited it. "What do you see?" Jesus asked. I focused, and then I noticed something truly extraordinary. Lines of golden light emanated from various points around the globe. Some lines were delicate as threads of silk, while others proved robust like shining rivers. They intertwined, creating an intricate network that enveloped the entire planet. "They are prayers," Jesus explained. "Each line you observe represents the prayers and intercessions of my followers. Notice how these connections intertwine, how they strengthen one another, forming a true shield of light over the earth. The brightest lines come from unexpected places, not just from grand cathedrals or traditionally Christian countries, but also from small communities, humble homes, hospitals, prisons, and even from places where religious persecution is intense." On October 31st, Jesus continued, "The spiritual kingdom will reveal itself to human eyes in a brief moment, yet filled with power. The veil that separates heaven from earth will be torn, not by force, but by the immense weight of accumulated prayers, and by the fullness of time." He raised his hand, and like a magic trick, the scene before us transformed. Millions of people around the world suddenly interrupted their routines. Their faces turned to the sky, reflecting expressions of astonishment and admiration. In offices, on the streets, in homes and schools, people found themselves on their knees, awestruck before something that defied all natural explanation. "Angels will appear," Jesus continued, his voice resonating with the strength of an unshakable truth. "Not as gentle and welcoming beings, but as the powerful warriors they truly are. They will make themselves known to all, both believers and non-believers, and their presence will have the power to shake the foundations of human understanding." I watched, hidden in the shadows, as immense angelic beings emerged over the great cities. Their wings spread out to unimaginable distances, and their faces radiated a sacred fire. They were not the delicate and serene figures we are accustomed to seeing in Renaissance artworks. They were kindred beings, described as rubies in the Bible, so powerful that, as they approached, the mountains trembled. The angels spoke, Jesus revealed. And their voices will echo simultaneously in all languages. They announce that the kingdom of heaven is at the door, that the time of preparation is coming to an end, and that the moment of choice has finally begun. As he spoke, I could hear the angelic voices resonating throughout the earth like a powerful thunder. Your message resonated clearly and unmistakably. Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight his paths. The King is on his way, bringing his reward with him. The scene then transformed once again, revealing the immediate impact of this supernatural visitation. In various places, extraordinary revivals arose spontaneously. Individuals who had never entered a church found themselves prostrated, crying out for salvation. Even those who considered themselves steadfast could not hold back their tears when confronted with the undeniable presence of the divine. Drug addicts were instantly set free. The spirits found healing, and families that had lived years of conflict were reconciled in moments of supernatural grace. This, Jesus said, radiant with joy and illuminating his being, is what I have prepared for. The largest harvest of souls in the history of humanity will begin on October 31st, 2025. As this date approaches, the atmosphere around us becomes denser, and the light that surrounds us seems to dim a little. However, not everyone will welcome this visitation with joy. Many will close their hearts, even in the face of undeniable evidence. They will try to justify what they have witnessed, seeking to rationalize the supernatural as mere natural phenomena. I observed, attentively, as news presenters and scientists hurried to offer explanations for the angelic appearances. Some claimed it was a collective hallucination caused by atmospheric disturbances. Others, in turn, raised the hypothesis that an advanced holographic technology, created by unknown forces, was at work. Curiously, those who were supposed to lead others in the search for truth were, in reality, erecting walls of denial. The religious temple, Jesus continued, will be divided, and I could sense the sadness in his voice. Some will embrace this movement of my spirit, while others will reject it, as it does not align with their theological beliefs. Some will claim that these angels are in fact demons in disguise, and that this revival is an illusion, as it does not fit the standards they have established. Before us, the scene was marked by the presence of prominent pastors and religious leaders who stood in opposition to the supernatural manifestations. They warned their congregations to be prudent, to test the spirits. However, they did not realize that it was the very Spirit of God acting with unparalleled power. But those who are my true shepherds will know how to recognize my voice. Jesus speaks with confidence. They will guide their flocks in this new season with wisdom and discernment. They will not fear the supernatural, for they know that I am a supernatural God. He has revealed to me churches around the world where pastors are welcoming angelic visits, and where congregations are experiencing extraordinary miracles, unprecedented healings and deliverances. These churches transformed into true beacons of light in a confusing world, seeking to understand the events around them. Jesus continued, his face radiant with joy. The young people will be especially receptive to this message. Children and adolescents will see the angels with a special clarity, as their hearts are still free from the cynicism and doubt that often affect adults. These young people will become brave warriors, ready to join the army of the end times. I witnessed impressive moments, young people leading prayer meetings, children prophesying with a precision that left adults in awe, and teenagers boldly sharing the gospel both in schools and on social media. The new generation was emerging with a spiritual authority that impressed even the elders. It was then that Jesus revealed something to me that made my spirit vibrate with expectation. Starting from November 1st, the supernatural will become part of everyday life. Miracles that once required immense faith will begin to occur frequently. The gifts of the Spirit will manifest at levels not seen since the times described in the book of Acts. Believers will lay hands on the sick and witness their instant healings. I witnessed extraordinary moments in hospital morgues and funeral homes, where lives that seemed lost were resurrected. People who could not hear began to hear. The deaf regained their hearing, and those who could not walk suddenly took their first steps. However, what impressed me the most was not just the physical healings. I saw profound transformations, lives being renewed, addictions being overcome, and families being restored in ways I never imagined possible. What I witnessed was a wave of hope and renewal on an unprecedented scale. "This is the beginning of the final harvest," Jesus proclaimed, his voice resonating with an unmistakable divine authority. "The time of the Gentiles is coming to an end, and it is essential that my people be prepared to reap the fruits that have been sown over centuries of prayer and sacrifice." Before we continue, just one request. Please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep going. Before proceeding, just one request. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to keep going. The impact of this revelation settled in my spirit as Jesus continued, revealing the vastness of what was to come. The light around us vibrated with every word he spoke, and I felt the very fabric of eternity responding to his voice. "Tomas," he said, his gaze piercing my soul with endless love. "The angels that will manifest on October 31st do not come merely to observe. They come as reapers, and the field is filled with fruits ready for harvest. The scene we once knew has metamorphosed into a vast spiritual battlefield." I watched, astonished, as demons fled in terror, and the angelic army descended with overwhelming force. It was no longer about the small tempting spirits that whispered lies into the ears of humans. It was something much greater and more grandiose. They were principalities and powers, rulers of darkness who, for centuries, had kept their territories under control. Now, they were being forcibly expelled from their strongholds. Jesus explained that the enemy was aware that his time was limited. His voice resonated with a mix of triumph and provocation. He will launch his last desperate attempts to deceive and destroy. However, my angels will establish new spiritual boundaries that cannot be crossed. I watched in admiration as imposing angels positioned themselves over the great cities. Their flaming swords formed barriers of divine protection, enveloping everything in a sacred aura. The spiritual atmosphere hovering over these areas began to illuminate, as if the mist were dissipating from a mountainous valley. Where oppression and despair once reigned, now liberation and hope were emerging. The revival that will begin on October 31st will be something unprecedented, something that has never been recorded in the history of humanity, Jesus continued, with his eyes shining with a divine passion. It will not be limited to churches or organized denominations. Its influence will spread to schools, hospitals, government buildings, and even the darkest corners of society, where my light has been rejected for generations. The scene transformed. Teenagers in high school suddenly surrendering to the power of God during breaks. Teachers, once limited by secular restrictions, now boldly prayed alongside the students as supernatural encounters became so evident that they could no longer be ignored. In the hospitals, entire wings were being emptied, as if a divine cure were blowing like a purifying wind. However, Jesus warned that this revival would come at a price to be paid. His tone became more serious as he stated that those who chose to embrace this transformation would face intense persecution, both from religious and secular authorities. Many will be incarcerated, some will lose their sources of income, and others will face physical violence for refusing to deny what they have witnessed. I saw people being arrested for healing the sick in public places. I also witnessed pastors being removed from their pulpits for preaching about supernatural authorities. Young people were expelled from universities for refusing to deny the reality of their angelic encounters. However, even in the face of all this adversity, the fire of God burned even more intensely in their hearts, and their testimonies became increasingly impactful. "This persecution will be fundamental to my objectives," Jesus declared with unwavering confidence. "She will distinguish the wheat from the chaff, the true from the false. Those who truly know me will not be shaken. On the contrary, they will stand firm, like pillars of fire in the darkness." The scene expanded, revealing the movement of underground churches emerging in various parts of the world. Believers gathered in homes, caves, and abandoned buildings, and their faces radiated the same supernatural glow that I had witnessed during the angelic visitations. These gatherings were filled with extraordinary miracles, brimming with impactful prophecies and marked by a unity that transcended denominational barriers. "My true church is the one that emerges from the shadows," Jesus said, with profound satisfaction. "It will not be recognized by its buildings or budgets, but by the manifestation of my glory and the demonstration of my power. The religious systems that suffocated my spirit will crumble, while the remnant that remained faithful will be clothed with unprecedented authority." He introduced me to people who would stand out as leaders in this season. Some were anonymous pastors, serving in small churches, while others were businessmen who, even amidst corrupt industries, kept their integrity intact. Many were young people who, until then, had remained faithful in their anonymity. However, suddenly, they would find themselves catapulted into positions of influence. "The media will try to discredit and silence these voices," Jesus continued. "However, my truth will not be restricted. It will spread through supernatural phenomena that transcend human communication systems. Dreams, visions, and angelic visits will become the main means of revelation. It has become impossible for the enemy to dominate the narrative. I witnessed impressive scenes where people, on different continents, received identical prophetic dreams on the same night. These messages were conveyed through supernatural encounters, which left no room for doubt regarding their divine origin. The traditional guardians of information found themselves unable to contain the flow of spiritual truth. In this season, the economic systems of the world will face great upheavals. Jesus revealed this, and his voice resonated with a powerful mix of judgment and mercy. What was built on greed and exploitation will inevitably crumble. However, I will take care of my people in supernatural ways that will leave even the most faithful surprised. Imagine winners finding provisions hidden in pantries that seemed empty, money appearing in bank accounts without apparent explanation, businesses thriving even amidst economic chaos as they followed the principles of the kingdom. Meanwhile, I observed the collapse of financial institutions that had been built on dishonest foundations. The political landscape will undergo a profound transformation. Jesus continued, and his words resonated like a divine decree. Those leaders who fostered iniquity will be removed from their positions, not through a human revolution, but by a supernatural intervention. High justice will be swift and undeniable. Corrupt politicians will suddenly find themselves unable to utter lies. Their deceptions will be exposed in real time as they attempt to address the public. Your words, in a supernatural way, will be transformed to reveal the truth instead of perpetuating falsehoods. While some fell dead in the midst of their speeches, victims of the same power that had taken the life of Ananias and Sapphira, other leaders stood out. Those who preserved their integrity, even in the smallest matters, would be elevated to positions of greater influence. Jesus, with a look of approval, made a point of emphasizing this truth. They will govern with a wisdom that emanates directly from heaven, and their decisions will bring healing to the nations. The vision revealed new leaders emerging from unexpected places. Former military personnel, teachers, small business owners, and even reformed criminals found themselves called to occupy positions of authority, as their hearts had proven faithful in the challenges they faced. These individuals ruled with an almost supernatural wisdom, bringing peace to regions that had previously been marked only by conflict. "The family structure will be restored in this season," declared Jesus, with his face illuminated by a contagious joy. "The spirit of Elijah will turn the hearts of the fathers toward their children and vice versa. Marriages that once seemed lost will find healing in an instant, and prodigal children will return home in a time that defies logic." I witnessed extraordinary moments of family reconciliations that felt like true miracles. Parents who, for decades, had left their children felt an irresistible force that led them to return and ask for forgiveness. On the other, adult children who carried the hurt in their hearts suddenly found themselves enveloped by a wave of supernatural love, capable of melting away years of accumulated resentment. Worn-out marriages were renewed when couples discovered God's love together, in ways that made their past conflicts insignificant. As the light began to fade, I felt myself being pulled back through the veil cosmic, carrying the weight of divine revelation in my spirit. The transition occurred quickly, yet smoothly, as if I were awakening from an intense and vivid dream. However, this experience was more real than anything I had ever lived on Earth. I felt a gasp as I felt the air filling my lungs again, and upon opening my eyes, I was met with worried faces leaning over me. Even when my physical senses returned, the visions remained vivid in my memory. Every detail was etched with an almost supernatural precision. The fire of God's presence still burned in my chest, and I had the absolute certainty that I had been chosen to convey an urgent message to the world, which stands on the brink of the greatest spiritual revival in the history of humanity. October 31st, 2025 is approaching, and everything is about to change. The time of uncertainties has come to an end, giving way to the preparation phase. The return was almost immediate. Upon opening my eyes, I found myself staring at the white ceiling of a hospital, while the rhythmic sound of the machines beside me filled the room. Marie's face was illuminated by tears of relief. The doctors referred to what happened as a true miracle, stating that my heart had stopped for over 20 minutes, a time that normally would be enough to cause irreversible brain damage. However, I had surprisingly returned without any after effects. In fact, I felt more alive than ever. The bullet that was supposed to end my life transformed into a portal for a deeper understanding of the true purpose of existence. What was once a routine marked by deadlines, logistical routes, and financial pressures now unfolded into a conscious journey in search of eternal meaning. In the months that followed my resurrection, as Marie affectionately calls it, I implemented significant changes in my life. I transformed my truck into a true chapel on wheels, taking advantage of the long hours on the road, not only to pray but also to share my message with all the truck drivers and people who cross my path. October 31st, 2025 will be a milestone, marking the beginning of something unprecedented in the spiritual history of humanity. I started gathering with other truck drivers during rest stops, with the intention of sharing my experience and the urgent message I received. At first, many were skeptical, but as my testimony spread, an increasing number of people began to take seriously what I had to say. Prayer groups started to form spontaneously at gas stations along the major transportation routes in Canada and the United States. What truly impresses me is how the experience I had with Jesus completely transformed my perception of reality. I now understand that we are immersed in prophetic times, in the final moments leading up to a divine manifestation, capable of shaking the foundations of the world as we know it. The small anxieties that used to worry me lost their importance, as I witnessed the grandeur of the divine plan unfolding before my eyes. Marie noticed the transformation immediately. "Have you come back as someone else, Thomas?" she asked me a few weeks after my discharge from the hospital. Her eyes sparkled in a new way, full of life. Our marriage, which had previously been reduced to a functional partnership, more than a passionate union, now found a new depth and purpose. We were preparing together for the great spiritual event that was approaching, and this united us in a way we had never experienced before. Our children, who at first were skeptical about my experience, began to reconnect with faith as they observed the constant transformation in my life. Gian, who had completely distanced himself from the church during university, now stands out as a leader of a Bible study group on his campus, warning his peers about what is to come. It is fascinating how a near-death experience can reveal the true meaning of life. When you observe the world through the lens of eternity, your priorities rearrange themselves in surprising ways. What once seemed so relevant, promotions, status, prestige, now reveals itself to be insignificant in the face of the spiritual reality that is approaching. I am not claiming that life has become easy. I still face challenges. I still face my own human weaknesses. When I share the exact date and the events that Jesus revealed to me, many call me crazy. Some pastors concerned have advised me to avoid being so precise about the dates, reminding me that no one knows the day or the hour. I cannot ignore what I witnessed and heard directly from the Lord's lips. Whenever I climb into my truck for another journey, I am fully aware that I am not just transporting goods. I am delivering an urgent message to a world that needs to prepare. The calendar in my cabin displays a highlighted red circle on October 31st, 2025. With each passing day, we draw closer to the greatest supernatural manifestation this generation has ever witnessed. I warn everyone I meet, prepare yourselves. The veil that separates the natural from the supernatural is about to be torn, and everyone will have the opportunity to see the spiritual reality that has always been around us. As I continue my journey along the roads of Canada, my prayer is that all who hear this testimony take the warning seriously and prepare for the supernatural event that will begin on October 31st, 2025. For as Jesus revealed to me in that kingdom of light, it will not just be another day. It will be the beginning of the greatest harvest of souls that humanity has ever known. What an extraordinary and transformative testimony. The Bible reminds us in Joel chapter 2, verse 28, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prosper, your old men will dream dreams, while your young men will see visions." We are immensely grateful, Thomas, for gifting us with this urgent and hope-filled revelation. To you who have followed us up to this moment, we wish that the blessings of heaven fill your life with purpose, discernment, and faith. Remember, time is precious, and although it is short, grace is still within your reach. Get ready, for we will meet again in the next video.